I was also a minister, former minister of power. Prof, beyond, of course, your educational attainment, you are also known as a spiritual person. Looking at it, have we been able to mix it very well in terms of churning out our undergraduates in terms of content and character, as my guest in the studio has been alluding to?
I think that was very well said. When the whole issue of being granted a degree based on one's learning and character. And I tried as much as possible. Maybe many people know this part of the world, that when I became Vice Chancellor, cultism was so rampant. All over the place, there was cultism. Before I became Vice Chancellor, 2 years before I became Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria and Nsukka, cultists assassinated the Chief Security Officer of the university. A year before I became Vice Chancellor, cultists assassinated the Dean of the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Sciences. So when I became Vice Chancellor, I declared zero tolerance for cultism. And then when I came in, I saw where the problem was. Because quite often in Nigeria, we try to treat signs and symptoms instead of the real disease. So I found out that the reason that cultism was at the highest level was that most of those young people involved in cultism were not academic materials. And they came into university by fraudulent means. Some of them forged their school certificate. Some of them forged grades in JAMB. So I introduced what we call the post-JAMB test. And it is on record that it started at University of Nigeria and Nsukka when I was Vice Chancellor. We introduced that post-UTME test. That was the beginning of wiping out of cultism. For 5 years of my Vice Chancellorship, there was not a single cult war, and I didn't lose any student, I didn't lose any staff. And the reason is so simple. We made sure that anybody who was remotely connected to cultism was rusticated from the university. We made sure that all cultist groups were stopped. The student union elections, we screened every participant and contestant. And anybody who had any link to any of the cultic groups was barred from participating. And then we made sure that everyone who was found to be a cultist was sent back in from the university. At the end of the day, we were now able to start producing people who did not have that orientation. Very thankfully, other universities came on board. University of Benin, when Professor Mwanze was Vice Chancellor, Ife came along, Ibadan, Lagos, and so on, and many of the state universities. Now, eventually, the National Assembly adopted it under Dr. Chukwumerije, and even placed a bar on the amount of money to be charged students. Unfortunately, quite recently, it was abrogated and eventually reintroduced, thankfully for that. So I would say that we need to. But again, I introduced other aspects, and that's entrepreneurship and innovation. Even at the university, Federal University of Ekiti, I started a division of innovation, where we were able to build an electric car. Of course, that didn't continue. I got another federal appointment as minister. And while at UNN, I also had an innovation center. So I think students should be brought up to start thinking for themselves. It's not just giving you knowledge that you mechanically memorize, and at the end of the day in an exam, you go and pour it out. But it is for you to be able to solve problems. That is why for my students, sometimes I give what we call open book tests. Because no matter what you cram, if you're looking at a textbook, the more you look, the less you see. So, but if you can now think with deductive reasoning, think very instructively, know from your own, not only intuitively, but also strategically thinking, you'll be able to deduce answers for real life problems. So I think our orientation in academia should change. Our children should be taught from primary school how to think. Use your brain. Give them problems. Throw it to them. Even if it is in groups, let them model through the entire process and come up with a solution. Instead of, you cram this is the capital of Lagos, this is the capital of Enugu. capital of Abia State, this is the capital of Liberia, and so on. We need to teach functional education so that at the end of the day, our graduates will be nationally relevant and globally competitive. If we do not do so, we will be just swept aside while the current of innovation, technology continues to run the world. As was one of us just said recently in this program from Abuja, this is a knowledge economy. Nigeria must embrace the knowledge economy if we are to develop optimally. And then we will stop losing our best minds and brains, because if we have all the facilities to make our young people to realize that they can stay home. Young people are developing, teenagers, they are making drones, they are making cars, they are making helicopters, they are making airplanes. Nobody talks to them. They just go to motor parks and show these things. And at the end of the day, neither the local government, nor the state government, nor the federal government has any interest in these young people. And it is innovation that drives technology. We must come to a place where innovation, even if it is possible, we call it a course, that every teacher, every one who is involved in delivery of education has imbibed, so that our younger people will learn to think for themselves. Learn to think for themselves.
Much, Professor CHINEDU NEBO. The capital of Enugu is Enugu. I know that one very well. But let me say this very quickly. You know, we're talking about innovation. Even here at the Nigerian Television Authority, it is what we do yearly by doing a science exhibition for the youths. And we've seen quite a number of talented youths come out of that in the years and years that that exhibition has been going on as a science expo as put together by NTA's Educational Television. But let me ask Professor JEHU ONYEKWERE. We spoke earlier of the triple helix model, which has been seen to work very well in other climes. That is, you know, promoting technologies, promoting innovation with a handshake between government, research institutions or tertiary institutions, as well as industry. Especially in that zone where we have seen a lot of very vibrant youths with creative energies. How do we begin to cultivate this, even at the state level, before we look at it holistically from the national level?
Yes, let me put it in this form. Nigeria has a teeming youth population. First and foremost, Nigeria has the 7th largest population in the whole world and the 3rd largest youth population in the whole world after India and China. So what does that mean? What it tells us is that we need to harness these youths, because if we can capture the youth when they are growing age, we'll be able to channel their energy in the right direction, because it is said that extreme hypochondria requires extreme therapeutics. If the youths are not captured and put in the right channel of life, they will become restive, because they don't know what the time they have to use their time for. Because I remember when we were studying in the university, we studied the analog way. There was no computer. I wrote my bachelor's degree without the computer. There was no computer at all, no way at all. Then when eventually we continued to migrate and metamorphose into the digital economy, things started to change. I was surprised one day. I went to a shop to go and buy something. You know, common arithmetic. The child that was selling, maybe a child of 17 or thereabouts, couldn't do normal computation by normal, you know, brain work, and had to use a calculator to do. I said, oh, hold on, what are you doing? Can't you do this? 50 plus 50 is 100, plus another 50 is 150. Then you add 70 to it to be 220. It's simple arithmetic, which you can do computationally with the brain. Then, of course, what I'm trying to put here in perspective is that our youth have retrograded into something more in a state of laxity, because they have not seen education as something that is continuous. Education is a continuum. I have a 2 PhD degree, but of course I continue to study. It does not stop there. You know, and we have to put these things in the minds of our children, because the more we study, the more we know. According to an Italian and Roman scholar, Cicero, I quote him again, he said that if you do not know what happens in your past, that means you continue to be a child. So if we know something that happened in our past, we continue to educate our children based on that. I'm sure if we call some of our children and tell them what happened to Nigeria in 1960, they don't even know. Ask them who and who were the founding fathers, they don't know. But tell them what happens in the US, the person that invented this jazz music, they will give you all the answers. But of course, energy is being directed in a negative form. I'm not saying that all those things are bad, but if we have to develop our own economy from our own basis, we have to build a sound basis for educating our children. First and foremost, train them to know what is right, to do it the right way. Of course, knowledge is additional and it's an incremental thing. It does not end anywhere. No matter what level of education you have, you continue to study. If you have a sound academic knowledge and you do not do research, it becomes a retrograde information. It becomes to retrograde in the direction. Retrogression is a process that makes your knowledge to continue to decrease. So you must make it an incremental thing. So in another form, we have to put finance in place. You know, one thing that is important is finance. If there's a political will, there must be money to actualize the political will. Like I said before in my opening salvo, you see, most of our youth have ideas of innovation. Some can build cars, like the professor here has said. You know, people could manufacture so many other, you know, machineries, you know, in place in universities and elsewhere. But we will not finance these projects. These projects will become dead on arrival. So we must finance them by putting enough financial muscle in place to encourage them, because money is a source of increasing wealth. So what am I trying to say? I'm driving home my point by saying that youth are ready to work, but government also tap them at their knowledge level to educate and inculcate that discipline in them. Because if you do not channel them in the right way, they will go negatively, and that is where we lose out. Go negatively, and that is where we lose out. Go negatively, and that is where
somehow I found myself again receiving lectures in the lecture theater with a number of professors we've interviewed today. But let me soldier on. Professor Nebo, let's have this, you know, as some of your, you know, experience. Let's have some of your experiences. We have, how do we incentivize, you know, learning? You know, the way it is these days, we just want these quick wins, especially for the youth. We want, they want things to come yesterday. How do we, you know, these efforts we're talking about, the kind of education we're talking, it's a painstaking effort that takes time. Even the research we're talking about takes a lot of time, and that needs a lot of dedication. How do we begin to, you know, inculcate these habits, especially from the level of, I don't know whether those courses are still offered now, intro tech, you know, and then you come up before you even get into the universities?
Thank you very much. I would think that the first step will be to have a national policy that places innovation as priority. In other words, have a policy that rewards handsomely those who are innovative. Next, introduce it at the lowest possible level. Is it not a shame that little things like tiling of our houses, POPs for our you know, roofs and so on, screeding of our house walls and so on are done by Liberians, Ghanaians, Sierra Leoneans, if you want to do them correctly? Where did all the handcraft we learned in my own days in primary school go? They are no longer taught. Now the next thing will be to intro-tech, as you rightly mentioned. Make it mandatory that every student, especially at the secondary school level, will have something to do, introduction to technology, and then using of the information superhighway, the internet, to solve problems. You know, there is almost nothing you cannot get from the internet. Just Google it or find a search engine, and then you get the information you want to devise something, to build something, to erect something, or to understand something. The next step will be to have summer camps or Christmas camps or summer camps, whatever, wherever we can find time within the year, where every state will have a camp for innovation, where young boys and girls who are talented will come and show their talents. And then there should be competition at the local government levels, to the state levels, interstate levels, and national level in innovation, so that we can capture these talents. I see them wallowing, and it is so grievous to me. In fact, from my own resources, I was able to, while I was still a lecturer in the university, encourage some young people. But unfortunately, no single individual can do that. We need government intervention. So I would say government should spend whatever it takes to bring us out of this technological stupor that we found ourselves. And then I believe that internet bandwidth should be regarded as infrastructure. Every child, whether in the village, whether in the city, should have access to some extent to internet. And using solar technology and so on, devices can be fabricated now or manufactured, where even at the primary schools in the villages, people can have access to the internet. So give the children a challenge. Tell them, I want you people to build a car, helicopter, drone, whatever it is. And you'll be surprised at what these our young people would do. I'm just pleading that government should use their power to enact whatever it is, a law or whatever that says innovation is priority. Once that is done, and then it is backed up, like my brother, Professor NNAJI said, backed up with the finances, and then people know that I can go and show off what I have done. If I manufacture something, there is a forum at the local government level, at the state level, at the national level, to show it off. NUC is doing that at the university level, but that's mostly for mechanical devices that are neither here nor there. I believe that with the information superhighway, we can go nuclear in this kind of a thing. And that is the way I believe that if we now pay attention to innovation, entrepreneurship will spring up. There are lots of ideas that are there. Our young people, many of them are entrepreneurial, but unfortunately there is no backing, there is no support, there are no competitions where you can send a proposal, bankable proposals, and then have a microfinance bank or a regular commercial bank support you to do something. We need to create such an enabling environment, and I believe it will be better for Nigeria in the long run. For Nigeria in the long run.
Professor CHINEDU NEBO, you've spoken with so much patriotic fervor. And talking about patriotic fervor, I want to take this report about the Nigerian flag, green, white, green.
The independence anniversary of a nation naturally calls for pomp and pageantry.